it's the way that I want you to think now that we're kind of forming our rhythm and our lead and kind of listening along to it. The next thing to think of is if you're listening to is really tapping into making the especially in the blues it sound like a singer, okay? And but that's where some of the embellishments take charge. Like if you listen to someone like even like Nina Simone, you know, or some of the like old R&B and blues vocalists that weren't playing the guitar, right? And you would get this kind of, you know, so the first round that I did there, was like, right? That has, if especially if I do it again on the 4, right? It definitely like you could almost put lyrics to that, and that would be like a vocal line. You know what I mean? And especially within that rhythm. So then, what really happens is when you take somebody like a Nina Simone or these blues singers, that's their vocal, that's their lyric, right? That's like if you're reading the lyrics, that's right there, the first line. But how they may sing that would be a little bit more like. So that little section right there isn't actually part of the lyrics. That's like the little oohs and ahs and ohs that they do to embellish the lyric in the vocal line. Right? Does that kind of make sense?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So structurally, what we can do is, and that's kind of the way, you know, especially when I'm listening to, you know, there's a great album like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Albert King kind of ripping solos back and forth, and I'm getting that from the both of them, and it's awesome to see how they're playing off of each other, you know, and that's kind of what's happening. Instead of it being all oohs and ahs, which is kind of like sizzle and no steak, you know what I mean, or it just being like a bland piece of steak, or just the lyrics. Like if somebody called me up, you know, at a blues jam and was just like, all right, dude, we're gonna do this BB King song, like you sing it, right, and I don't have a guitar on me, right, I would literally just be doing like the steak. You know what I mean? There would be like no sizzle to it. It would literally just be like, and then when the 4 came, same thing. And you can even hear it when we get to the 5, it switches. You know, those vocal melodies change. It's almost like those two, it's almost like the first lyric and melody is the same as the second lyric in the melody, and then it changes for that 5 chord going down to the 4. So that would be the way that I would have to sing it. Would be straightforward, word for word, and note for note, the way that whoever sang it before did it. You know what I mean? Whereas like some of my singer friends at Berkeley would do like, that is still, the lyric is there, right? That lyric is there, that melody is there. It's just way more embellishment. You know what I mean? And that is when you're thinking of your playing, you can think, all right, is this the lyric? Is this the line? Is this the structure? Or is this the embellishment and kind of taking that lyric and adding on to it? Or is it like one of my favorite expressions that one of my music professors said? I don't even think it was. I think I just saw it on YouTube. The guy said, you know, it's like grabbing all the spices off of a spice rack and just like dumping it into a pan with nothing else. You know what I mean? And it's just like, that's what, if you know, that's the problem that a lot of more immature guitar players come in with. You know, we're like, oh, dude, this is like jam of blues. It's like, dude, there's nothing to grab onto there. It's just all like, you know, oh, what's next? What else can I throw in? You know what I mean? Where then I have like some players that'll just do that, you know, and then wait for the for the 4. You know, and it's like, all right, that's great. You could probably do a little bit more with that. You know what I mean?
That's kind of like how I feel sometimes. Like,
yeah.
I feel like I'm catching up, and if I slow down, I can catch up.
One of the best things that Clapton does whenever he's in a blues jam, and I have not noticed this in anything that I've seen, but at one of the guitar workshops that I went to, someone had a video of it because they were trying to make a point, and you can see, and it was at like, I think it was at like his Crossroads concert, you know, where he just gets all those musicians to come in. Everyone's trading solos, and he comes in, you know, and when it's got that kind of like, especially that old school blues feel, he plays very old school the way that he does it. You know what I mean? Like he'll jump right into that style, you know, and it was just kind of like, and you see him go up for the note, for the follow lick, you know, or the embellishment, right? So that was like his lyric lick. And then he just kind of like doesn't, and then lets it sit for like one more line, and then, you know, whatever his next line was. So he knew the best thing to do, instead of jumping right back in, you know, and trying to pick up what it was to just let whatever it was that he said, you know what I mean, sit, and then come back in with it, you know what I mean? And in that sense, it would be the same as a singer. It would be like, all right, these are all my lines, okay, cool, I'm gonna sing this. They sang that line, and then it was like, are they really going to jump in and just say something completely random before the next line comes in? Or they could either do a little ooh to make, or just wait until the next line, you know what I mean? And that was like kind of what Clapton was doing. He was like, if I just jump in, you know, the next line that I jam in there is going to have nothing to do with the first line that I just said, and it's going to convolute the whole thing, you know? He's really good at that. So that's now the next part, is being able to split that up, you know what I mean? And to finish the video up, the best exercise to do it is, you know, 1 measure or 2 measures, right? So it's either going to be, if you have your 12 bar out, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, just like that, or 1, 2, 3. So that was 1 measure, lyric, pause, an embellishment in between if that's what it calls for, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Now 2 measures, 2, 2, 3, 4. 2. So 2 measures on, 2 measures off, and then the 5 chord. And it just ties it all back together. That little 5 thing that you're already doing, you know what I mean, to kind of switch it up. Now that exact idea, same lick I'll do. So those 2 things in between did not take away from the lyric and what sounded like the vocal melody. It just pushed it out a little bit more, and added a little bit more of an embellishment to it without completely drawing it away and making it too boring. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that'll be your next thing. So measure on, pause, measure, pause, measure on, measure, pause, or 2 measures on, 2 measure, pause, 2 measures on, 2 measure, pause, and then sticking to that structure. And this is where the in-betweens are, where you can just kind of like add something in that you don't even really know what you're going to play until you've started to play it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. Does that kind of make sense?
Okay, yeah, it
It's
does.
like it's getting out there. You know what I mean? But that's like kind of the way to think about it. One measure of playing, one measure of not playing, one measure of playing, one measure of not playing. What you would want to do there, so that's the first 4 measures of the 12 bar. What you would want to do there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're not quite the same. Then same there. 2, 4. So those 2 are the same. So in that first line, you have lick 1, space. Lick 2, space. Right? And then the same thing. Lick 1, space. Lick 2, space. Then will come the 5 chord. Right? Right. So then now the other exercise that we were doing is if you were doing 2 measures, it would just be lick 1, 2 measures, space 2 measures, lick 1, 2 measures. Yeah. So just to split it up, and the only reason is, especially if those licks are quick, if I came right in and I just did 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2. Then if I did it a third time, now it's just like, all right, man, you're starting to lose me a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then on the opposite end of that, if I did space, 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 now you're lost, right? Because none of those were consistent. You know what I mean? And when you're doing the longer ones, 2 measures, space, 2 measures, space, you only have those two options, the beginning of the first 4 and the beginning of the second 4, that you want to make those identical or at least close to identical to give it the lyrical theme, right?
To keep your attention.
To keep the attention, yeah, instead of like losing everybody. And then when you have the 4, you want to mix them up, you know, so you kind of draw, they're all very close to each other, you know what I mean? But you definitely would want like a lyric 1, space, lyric 2, space, back to lyric 1, space, lyric 2, space, like that. And that just gets so structured. And when you're doing that exercise, especially with a backing track, and you're just nailing that in, right, that just becomes such a solid foundation. And it's unreal that even if, you know, you're doing a blues jam, you know, and it's going around and it's going around, and now you can see, like, as it goes further and further, everything kind of starts to open up a little bit more, you know what I mean? Like, if you're like, even when me and you are kind of jamming, right, the first few rounds are a little bit more structured and conservative, and then they kind of open up. But the thing is, if it gets really open, you'd be surprised at breaking just that down, how much structure that has within it, how that lyric is still in all of that. And it's not the same if I were to do it that had no lyric to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's why when that foundation is there, that's what makes the higher up players so awesome, is because if you're not used to hearing that or pounding that lyrical foundation in your playing, you know, the only way that you think to translate it is, oh, it's just, you know what I mean? But like, there's really so much miniature structure in there. And another, you know, the best way to really think about it is it's just like language. You know what I mean? I mean, if you took a 3, 4, 5-year-old and just said, like, real quick, I want you to say 100 words. You know what I mean? It's just gonna be like utter nonsense. You know what I mean? Like, just coming flying out. You know, whereas for us, you know, what we used to have to do is, here is one sentence. You know, I like dogs. Dogs are great. You know, And then you're like, I get it now. It's sent. Oh, okay. And then you put the sentences together. It's like, all right. And now we're just able to flow through entire paragraphs, and we don't have to think about what is coming next because that foundation is already there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing when you get like one test that I was doing with a buddy of mine. We did it on Instagram, and I want to do it again. Was we would just sit there, and he would just be like, "All right, ready, and 1, 2, 3, F," and call out a couple chords, and I had to immediately jump into exactly what he was playing and figure it out from there. Tempo, key, and chord changes. We were only doing 2 chords just so I wouldn't have to like think too much. And that's the reason why, because it's just like if you don't know the language, and you get pulled over by a cop, you're just gonna like bumble your way through it. You know what I mean? And that's catching you off guard.
Yeah.
But like nothing can catch you off guard if you know that language. And starting with those superstructures is like how you do it. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, dude. I feel like I did acid or something. Like if you take like the one of the most popular blues lyric songs, right? That a lot of people would know, even if they're not into blues. It's like "The Thrill Is Gone," right?
Right.
So those first 2 lines, "The thrill is gone." The thrill is gone. It's gone for good. I forgot that. And then the same thing twice. And then when that 5 chord comes around, it's a minor blues, so it's a little different. But that 5 same 12 bars. When that minor chord comes or the 5 chord comes around, it switches and it's that last lyric, right? So that's something that you could think of. And B.B. King usually, even live, sang it exactly the same way for those 2 lines. You know what I mean? It was exactly the same thing. So, to think that...
My bad. Wait.
Right?
Yeah.
To get that same line... You know what I mean? There it is. That's "The thrill is gone, baby, it's gone for good." The thrill is gone, baby, it's gone for good. Now, let's say it was some crazy all-star jam, and Christina Aguilera was singing that. You know what I mean? She would be able to embellish that like no other, because she's an insane vocalist. But the way that she would do it, it would still be "The thrill is gone, baby, it's gone for good." So I can almost picture her doing, in that instance. Obviously, we're not playing anything close to that line, but right? Okay, it's like she sticks to it, maybe a little between that. That's an O, not part of the lyric. That's like a little ooh line. When she comes back in, instead of right, she might do. Now, it still didn't lose the lyric, right? It was just different. She just kind of started on a different note and came back down. So the melody and the lyric wasn't lost on her ability to embellish it. It's still there. She's just adding a little bit more onto it because she's got that much vocal vocabulary under her belt. You know what I mean? So if it's not now going to be B.B. King's, right, and then we come back in. Right, so that would be a very simplistic double line. If you're going to drift away from that, it better be able to still latch on to that same lyric. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's where it starts getting a little bit fun. How far away can you get where you're not losing that, you know what I mean? And losing the people and losing the listeners. But then, like we're saying, that if I do that, as soon as I do that lick twice, everyone's like, cool. If I do it a 3rd time, it's just like immediately, all right, dude, you got to give me something else. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like that trade-off. Now, if you're just so "The thrill is gone, baby, it's gone for good," you hear that once, you can literally sing it the 2nd time around. So this is where it starts getting interesting. Right? If that's going to be my lyrical line, I better be able to play that note for note, inflection for inflection the same way again. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's not a lyrical line.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then so there isn't any amount of lick, measure, pause, measure that can add up to the fact that you forgot the words on the first line. You know what I mean? Like, you can't make that, you can't structure your way back to that if you forgot the words. So that's really where it comes in. And now the funny thing is, why are you forgetting the words? Why would somebody forget the words? Or why would you play that lick and not be able to remember it? Is not necessarily that the lick was all over the place and it can't be played twice. It's just that you're removing yourself from thinking of what you just played in that way. You play that first lick, you come out of the gate, you play that first lick, no matter how simplistic it is, you're not thinking like, hey man, this is this lyric and I want to say the same thing again before I move past it. You know, you're just thinking like, one and done, on to the next one. And even if I'm doing a lot of jumps there, yeah, making huge leaps, I'm still not quite losing it. I still have every word that I said is still back there. You know what I mean? That I can touch on again. Which is why, if I were to structure it a little bit more, that's got a lot of the same things said twice, but then a lot of words separated and other words added in. So everything is still in the memory pocket of what I just said. Otherwise, then it just becomes too random. You know what I mean? It becomes going up to a 5-year-old and saying, say the first 100 words that come to your mind. Right. You know, there's no train of thought of what was said and what's coming. You know, so that's like a exercise is to write out, you know, one quick little lyric, and it can literally, like, you know how like people like joke around and be like, I got the blues because my dog ran away. 1411, 4411, 5415, and then kind of wrote that line, right, wherever you kind of saw it fit, like starting right on the one, and then on the next 4 bars, write the same exact line. You know what I mean? And if you're thinking, okay, I got the blues because my dog ran away, at the start of the 12 bar. If you're looking at it, like if you're looking at the actual words that need to happen twice, what won't happen? But even if you took it simpler than that, what won't happen is, you know, and then like the next line comes around and you're just like it won't make sense because you're looking lyrically at the same exact line. You know what I mean? And you're just like, well, you'll associate the words, you know, I got the blues because my dog ran away, to whatever you just did, right? And then that attachment is what's going to kind of sink it back in for the next time around. You know what I mean? And then just like you were doing too, like, yeah, like now what you could start doing is, I got the blues because my dog ran away, and then you can add those little oohs and ahs or whatever in the middle, or extend one of the words, or cut one of the words off, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? But at least having the word association for that lick that starts at 12 bar, and then that lick that starts, you know, on bar 5, you know, for the next 4 bars, is definitely going to help make sure that you're hitting something that you can pull back and remember, you know, rather than just like letting it go, like we were saying, like almost as though what you sang, I got the blues because my dog ran away, and then you come up to the next line and it's just like something completely different that has nothing to do with dog or blues. You know what I mean? Because it's just like way out there. You know,
Yeah,
it might
it's
that
kinda
might
like-
be something that helps. You know.